Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Astrid. Hi, Daniel. How are you this evening?
Hello, hello.
Great to be talking to you again on this webinar, Portuguese Citizenship, Who, When, and How to Apply in 2021. We have some wonderful guests on the webinar from Moscow tonight, Edinburgh, Texas, all over the world, it would seem, to find out how to become a Portuguese citizen with you, Daniel. And could you set the scene for us as well by telling us a little bit, just briefly, about Reis Pellicano, your international law firm?
Well, we are a law firm that is focused mainly on foreign clients. So we do work a lot with people from the US, from South Africa, as well as Brazilian citizens. And we do a lot of nationality procedures, gold visas, real estate here in Portugal. So basically people that want to come to Portugal, that want to invest in Portugal, and that want to enjoy our lovely sun.
Yes, beautiful. Okay, thank you very much. And just for clarity tonight, so we're talking about the bit beyond residency, aren't we? When you become a Portuguese citizen proper after a period of residency. And we will endeavour, as we always do on these webinars, to keep it as simple as possible, with step by step, with the basics as we begin. And then we can go into the complexity of some of the more personal questions and circumstances. So if you wouldn't mind then, Daniel, just a kind of very simple top level guide to this process of how to become a citizen in Portugal, be very grateful.
Well, you do have several ways of becoming a Portuguese national, and the first one will be the obvious, would be to be the son or daughter of a Portuguese citizen. So even if you are born abroad and you have a Portuguese mother or a Portuguese father, you can request the Portuguese nationality. The other one would be citizenship by marriage that Astrid just mentioned a few moments ago. She's married to a Portuguese citizen. She can become a Portuguese citizen as well. And the thing that you should need to consider is that the marriage should be at least three years before the submission of the nationality request. And this is even extended to the nationality via a civil partnership. So if someone lives together with a Portuguese citizen for more than 3 years, they can request a court in Portugal to recognize the civil partnership, and then afterwards request the nationality. One of the other nationalities that is being quite sought of in these present times is the nationality by residency time. So if you are a resident in Portugal and you have a residency permit that has elapsed at least 5 years, so in the last 15 years, you need to have a residency permit for at least 5 years, then you can request the Portuguese nationality. This will need to have a Portuguese exam, so the Portuguese authorities do know if you, in the time that you spent in Portugal, did learn the culture, did learn Portuguese. The other one would be, and this is probably one of the most sought of by people living abroad, is nationality via one the line of descent of one grandparent. So if you do have one Portuguese grandparent, either the grandmother or the grandfather, it is indifferent, you can request the Portuguese nationality, but you do need to prove a connection with the Portuguese community. Or if you do show that you know Portuguese, and this is the same exam that I just mentioned before, you will need to pass on the Portuguese exam, you can apply for the Portuguese nationality. And finally, I do think that we should approach the Sephardic Jew nationality, because it has been quite sought of by nationals living in the US, and some of them even in South America, because unfortunately Portugal, during the Inquisition times, we expelled the Jew community from Portuguese territory. And to make amends with history, we did create a program that does grant nationality to people that prove that they have Sephardic Jew origin. And Spain did exactly the same thing a few years ago, but they closed down their program. So in the Iberian Peninsula, the Sephardic Jew community can look into Portugal to have the Portuguese nationality. For this type of nationality, you will not need the Portuguese exam. The main thing that you do need to prove is the belonging to the Portuguese or to the Sephardic Jew community. And these are the main topics, the main aspects of the Portuguese nationality that I do think they are interesting.
Thank you very much for that outline. Also, we were going to talk about some of the recent changes in the law. And I mean, maybe that's probably a good thing to do now as we whet people's appetites and invite questions from our viewers on the webinar tonight. So, yeah, can you update us on recent changes in the law that people might not be aware of? And yes, folks who are watching, please do get your questions into the comments.
Yeah, well, the law was just recently changed, and they should approve a new regulation of the law within, I would say, 1 month. 1 to 2 months. It will depend a bit on the government, and especially with the COVID situation, the government is not so focused on passing on the regulation necessary, but so there are still some the nitty-gritty there is needs to be still put out in paper and in the law. But for the main aspects out of it, the nationality for people that have a Portuguese grandparent, it was clarified that this can only be requested if that Portuguese grandparent was Portuguese from origin. So if he obtained his citizenship by residing in Portugal for the 5 years, or if he obtained his nationality marrying to a Portuguese citizen, he is not considered a Portuguese from origin, and therefore the nationality from a grandparent, it will not be applicable. So the law did clarify quite in good terms that only people that have a Portuguese national, that is Portuguese from origin, are able to apply for the Portuguese nationality. The other major change in the law was something that was really much expected, especially because of countries that do belong to the Portuguese-speaking countries, because nationals from those countries that were applying for Portuguese nationality on the nationalities that you do need to present a language exam, they would need to prove that they did know how to speak Portuguese. And this was a bit idiotic for Brazilians, for people from Angola, Cabo Verde, because of course they went to school in those countries and they learned Portuguese, that's their native language. So nowadays, if you are a national from one of the Portuguese-speaking countries, you will not need to present any proof that you do know Portuguese. And finally, the other aspect that did change in the law was that children that were born in Portugal with one of the parents that were living in Portugal already. So let's say that an expat was here living in Portugal for more than a year, and he had a children, that children can apply for the Portuguese nationality. And the interesting part about it is that before the law changed, the expats needed to have a legal residency in Portugal. And nowadays, this is not mandatory. The expat will only need to prove that it was residing in Portugal for the previous year before the children was born. So a rental agreement, a work contract, the utility bills, things like that, to prove that the person was living in Portugal. And this is quite interesting and important for people that come to Portugal and did not take care of their migratory situation beforehand, but they end up liking a lot of to Portugal and staying in Portugal. And at the end of the day, if the children was born here, if the kids were born here, the Portuguese government did recognize that they deserve the nationality, because at the end of the day, they would be studying in Portugal and embracing the Portuguese culture. So these are the main changes in the law, and that will affect expats the most, I think.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Daniel, very much. We go to some of the more personal questions now, or personal circumstances. And in many ways, you know, you've answered the questions broadly, but let's apply it on a more personal level now. Thank you, Claire, for this question. The residency period for naturalization is now 5 years, but does permanent residency have to be obtained before the naturalization application can be made?
No, no. So you only need to be a resident in Portugal, legal residency in Portugal for 5 years in the last period of 15 years. So even if the person didn't request the permanent residency in Portugal, they will be eligible for the Portuguese nationality, but it is advisable to request the permanent residency. And this is because the services in Portugal for nationality are unfortunately a bit slow. And we are talking slow that a nationality request can take between 18 to 24 months. Nice. So if that person is still residing in Portugal, they should request a permanent residency, so they are not illegal in the country, so they can travel and move around freely. And it is advisable, if they are still in the country, to request a permanent residency. But it is not necessary to request the permanent residency to obtain the Portuguese nationality.
That's a great answer. Thank you. So you would recommend embarking on the residency, by the sound of it?
I would, if the person is still in Portugal. But let's say that you stayed in Portugal for 6 years, all with a legal residency in Portugal, but then you decided to move abroad and you didn't request the permanent residency. Then it will not be necessary to request a permanent residency to request a nationality. But if you are living in Portugal, and if your plan is staying in Portugal and living in Portugal, I would recommend doing so, because just waiting for the nationality to be approved, it is a long time. And of course, you do need to travel abroad. You do need to feel safe in the country, and the best way to do so is have a legal residency in Portugal.
Very good. And the waiting time there, is that slow? I think there was a word you used, and it was slow. Is that because of the sheer volume of cases now?
Well, it is, because with the recent changes in the law, it enlarged, the scope is way broader than it was 5-10 years ago. So there is a lot more people that can request a Portuguese nationality if you do compare to 10 years ago. And this is connected as well with the period of crisis in Portugal, that no new public employees were hired to the services. So if you do have an increase in cases, but a decrease in public employees assessing the cases, what will happen is that you will have a backlog, and that backlog nowadays, it will depend on nationality to nationality. In our office, if possible, we do try to divert the nationalities to registries outside of Lisbon, because they're usually faster, but it does depend on the type of nationality. If it's possible, we will divert it from Lisbon. If not, we'll just have to play the waiting game and wait for it to be approved. That's basically it.
Okay, not much can be done about that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let me interrupt you. Sometimes there is something that you can do. You can do an urgency request if you do have enough documental proof that it is an urgent case. Let's say, for instance, someone that is a US national, and that lived in Portugal for the past 6 years. And that person has a really good job opportunity in Germany. and having the Portuguese nationality will make their lives way much easier just going to Germany, because they will be EU nationals.
Yeah.
So if you do have enough proof to demonstrate that your case is urgent, then there is something that we can do about it. If it's just something that you would like to have the nationality as fast as possible, then unfortunately, unless we have a document stating, there's not much that we can do.
That's really good to know, though. Thank you for that. Really good. So the second part of Claire's question, do children of foreign citizens have to wait until their parent actually receives naturalization before applying, or can they apply as part of the parent's application?
Well, no joint applications are allowed in Portugal. So if, for instance, you have a Portuguese grandfather and you want to pass on the nationality for your kids, then you will need to first get your application sorted out and approved. And then once your nationality is approved, then your kids can obtain the nationality. So no family packages or nationalities in terms of the registry in Portugal are allowed, but for instance, in the nationality for grandkids, it is slower than the rest. But nationality is of direct descent of Portuguese people. So once you obtain your nationality as the grandson of a Portuguese citizen, you will be considered Portuguese from birth. And this nationality is passed on faster than other types of nationalities, and those are the ones that can be diverted to other types of registries outside of Lisbon. So although the main process will be slow, the children on the line of descent, they will be faster.
Okay, thanks for that. And I'm not sure exactly which route Claire is taking, but the third part of the question is, do children have to prove connection to the national community? And how do they do that if they're not at school in Portugal, for example?
Well, it will depend on the type of nationality. If as I said, Claire is the one applying for the nationality, and she is the granddaughter of a Portuguese citizen, then she will be the one that will need to demonstrate connection to the Portuguese community. Okay. If and the children of Claire will not need to demonstrate that, because they will be the children of a Portuguese national from birth. Yeah. If on the other side, we're talking about other types of nationalities, it will vary. So if we could clear that out, probably would be a good idea.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Claire, on that. If you could let us know which route you intend to take. Just a quick one here from East Tabsh. I hope I've got that right. Hello, any minimum number of residence days in the last 5 years?
It will, residency days in Portugal to have the nationality granted. Well, it will basically depend if we are talking about the EU national or national from other countries, because EU national usually has the certificates approved for residing in Portugal for 5 years. And as long as that person will have their income tax in Portugal or rental agreements in Portugal, it will be easy to demonstrate that EU national stayed in Portugal for the past 5 years. If we are talking about other types of residency, so people outside of the EU, usually they will have the residency renewed by CEF, and CEF does look into that if you stayed in Portugal for at least 6 months per year. Usually the rule of thumb is if you do stay 6 months per year for each calendar year, you'll get your residency renewed, and thus you can obtain the nationality after 5 years of renewing your residency permit.
So basically, in that case, 6 months of each year is advised.
Yeah. As a rule of thumb, 6 months for each year, but there is actually exceptions in the law that may be used if necessary. So let's say that now with COVID, someone went abroad to take care of their parents, and they were stuck in other country for 1 year. CEF will have that into consideration once you are renewing your residency permit because of humanitarian reasons or even work reasons. Let's say that you went abroad for 1 year because you needed to work or your company just really needed you outside of Portugal. If that is justified, once you are doing the application to renew the residency permit and you have actual documents that demonstrate why you stayed in Portugal, the residency will actually be renewed. We had cases like that, for instance, people that went abroad to take care of grandchildren, or the opposite, someone that went out to take care of the parents, and they had all the medical paperwork from the case, and that was submitted to CEF. And even though that person was outside of Portugal for 1 year and a half, we actually managed to renew the residency permit. It was a fight, but it was a fight worth fighting for.
And that, of course, is a good reason to use somebody like yourself, because you're aware of these precedents in a way that somebody who's approaching it for the first time just wouldn't know. And of course, it's good to know as well that to note that the humanitarian reasons, the mitigating circumstances, and that the Portuguese government take that view. But it would appear there's a rule here to keep a paper trail.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You've got to be able to prove these things, haven't you? So the better the paper trail, your travel documents, all that sort of stuff, really important to keep, right?
Correct. Portugal is still a country of the physical paper and stamps. We do love stamps and physical papers. So our advice is always keep your documents in a folder, in a file. Let's say, for instance, if you are a grandchildren of a Portuguese citizen and you are South African, but you do travel to Portugal quite often, let's say twice per year. The flights that you take to Portugal are a proof of connection to the Portuguese community. Let's say that you enrolled in Benfica or Sporting, the football clubs. Those are proofs of connection to the Portuguese community as well. Enrolling with clubs outside of Portugal, but that do belong to the Portuguese community. All that paper trail, it is quite important to demonstrate to the registry here in Portugal that you do belong to the Portuguese community. And we've had cases that our clients reached our office with this thick folders with a lot of paper trail that allowed us to put a good case into the registry and have the nationality approved. So the more paper trail, the merrier. That's the rule of thumb.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds quite nice actually to keep a sort of scrapbook of your background, of your process, and your love of Portuguese culture. So there's an upside to that as well. Fantastic. Okay. Great question from Nick Steinman, and we knew this would come up about the language test, the A2. It does strike fear into people, and I'm sure we can talk a little bit more about preparing for the A2. But Nick's saying, I have been married to a Portuguese citizen for 30 years. Would I have to pass the language test?
No.
What? Say that again.
No. For marriage, you won't need to pass on the Portuguese exam. So that's one of the advantages of, especially for 30 years. If we're talking about a marriage that has more than 5 years, you will not need to show any proof of connection to the Portuguese community, because there is an assumption by the law that by the extent of the marriage, let's say 5 years, 7 years, 30 years, you do actually belong to the Portuguese culture because you had contact with the Portuguese culture, living with a Portuguese citizen. So if the nationality or if the marriage is more than 5 years, then no proof of connection to the Portuguese community needs to be displayed. If the marriage is between 3 and 5 years, then proof of connection to the Portuguese community, it is necessary. And for instance, the language exam would be something that would be appreciated, of course.
Of course. Okay. So Nick, I think you're pretty safe there. 30-year marriage, a house over here as well, and your children have obtained citizenship. So a very good case for your connection to Portugal. Right. Over to Tina in the USA, from the USA for citizenship through a Portuguese grandparent. An FBI report is requested. When this arrives, should it be opened and apostilled or sent in the sealed envelope? What's the best thing to do there for Tina?
All the documents obtained abroad that are to deliver in the Portuguese authorities need to be apostilled. And for some services, let's say SEF, the Border Patrol Police, they even need to be translated. For nationality purposes, if the documents are in English, Portuguese, in English, French, Spanish, in some services, they can accept the documents in a foreign language. But it will depend on the service and if they do have someone that understands the language working over there. So I would say that as a rule of thumb, it's necessary for all the documents obtained abroad to be apostilled and translated as well into Portuguese. For some specific cases, and this will need to be analyzed on a case basis, the translations may not be necessary, but this is a may, not a rule.
Okay, that's good to know. Julia asks, how do we contact you? I'm assuming that's you, Daniel. So Reis Pellicano, you can find Daniel through our business directory at expatsportugal.com. It's a good way.
My colleague Lydiane is putting our general email in the chat. So if you want to,
I've also put the link on further down.
That's tremendous.
Excellent.
That's really good. Yeah, you may have seen Lydiane studiously writing down there. Do you want to wave to everybody, Lydiane?
Daniel. Lydiane is here on the support wave, providing a bit of support for the webinar. So if you do have some deeper questions than the things that we've approached here in the webinar, feel free to email us. We'll try to assist you to the best of our knowledge. But do bear in mind that with the lockdown, we will not be able to reply in 24 hours. So expect a reply in, I would say, 48 to 72 hours. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Incredible times. And of course, let Daniel know that you've come through expatsportugal.com because he particularly loves people from our community, I've heard.
Yeah.
Okay. With regards to language proficiency, what is the extent? I knew we'd come back to this. This is hi, Catherine. Good evening to you over there in the States. Is it a basic conversation or something more intense?
It is intense. It is intense. I've actually accompanied 2 clients to the language tests, and although I was not making actually the exam, but I was listening to what was the conversation that was taking place. So you will have several parts of the exam. You will have a writing exam where you just have some questions and you don't need to answer. So the written Portuguese will be assessed and analyzed as well. You will have what we call, it's probably the translation is wrong, but it's understanding Portuguese. So you'll have a record of someone speaking Portuguese and then some questions at the end, and you will have to interpret the questions as well as what was recorded. You will have a part of the exam that you'll just talk with the people assessing you. And usually I would say that people that are living here for 5 years and they practice Portuguese every day, as well as in the written part, they do need to practice the written part. They will do fairly well in the exam. But if you are living abroad, you will need to have Portuguese classes because the A2 level is not easy, and Portuguese is not an easy language to learn. So do have some classes, do come to Portugal and live for 1 or 2 years so you do practice your Portuguese. And if you do so, the exam will be, I would say, fairly accessible. But if you are just living abroad and you did listen to your Portuguese speak at home, this is not at the necessary and required level of the exam.
Okay, some proper tuition then. That's good to know. Thank you, Daniel.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've covered this, but just to reconfirm, Julia saying, how long does it take the Portuguese government to grant Portuguese citizenship after you apply for naturalization through the Portuguese parents route? So up to 2 years, we were saying, yeah?
For the grandparents, correct? Was that the question?
Parents, through parents, the parent.
Through parents, that is one of the nationalities that we can divert to other registries. So if you have a Portuguese parent, we can do the nationality request to registries that are not so packed. I would say that between 6 to 9 months, give or take, it is a good interval from 6 to 9 months from a registry outside of Lisbon.
Okay, good to know. Thank you very much. Message from Daryl. Yeah, we have changed our start time. Good news, Daryl, is that all of these are recorded, so you will be able to watch the first half hour. But note to everybody, because of the networking that has gone on after the main part of the webinar, we decided to start earlier at 7:30. So yeah, 7:30 start for these, and a little bit of mingling at the end as well. Okay, so lots of wonderful questions in there. The email address is in for getting in touch with Daniel's office. Nick Steinman, who asked earlier on about coming in through the marriage route. Can you guys do all the work for me if I go ahead? All documents I have would be in English apart from the marriage certificate. So
that's all right.
Of course you can do all the work, right?
What we usually do is once the process is awarded to us, we will send a checklist. We will discuss all the options. The documents that are usually to be obtained by the client are, as you said, marriage certificates, birth certificates, things like that. And the client, because this needs to be done where the document is issued, or in the US or South Africa, the document will need to be apostilled in the country of origin. So this is something that we cannot do on behalf of our clients. But as soon as they send the birth certificates, the marriage certificates, the documents that we will need, we can do the rest here in Portugal. And it's actually advisable that the translations are done here in Portugal. We do work with a company, a translating company that usually does our translations. We send all the documents, we go pick the originals up, and then we send all the documentation to the registry. So we do coordinate all the process. We do take care of the translators. We do take care of the registry. We do answer all the questions from the registry when they do so. So it is a process that we accompany from start to the end until you've got your nationality paper granted or your birth certificate granted. Do bear in mind that the final part of the nationality is the registry of the nationality in the Portuguese system. Obtaining the citizen's card, that is something that only the client can do, because they will have to collect the biometric data, the photograph, the fingerprints, as well as the signature. So that part usually we do set for our clients in the consulates of the places that they are living, or if they are living in Portugal, we will book all the necessary situations with the registry and accompany the clients to the registry if necessary.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Thanks very much. I'm sure that helps Nick there. Message from Sue. Hi there, my son has been accepted on the grounds of right of Jewish return to Portugal. I would like to become a Portuguese citizen too. Is there any problem with that? So presumably there's two approaches. Sue would have to prove her own direct descent from Sephardic Jews, or through her son, presumably.
It does actually help a lot that her son was already approved by the Jewish community, because if you are doing the Sephardic Jew route, you will need to first submit your case in the Portuguese Jewish community, either in Porto or in Lisbon. And this is a screening that the Jewish community does to see if that person actually has Jewish descent. So they will analyze the genealogy of the person and all the aspects that you can provide that you do belong to the Sephardic Jewish community. If that was already done to her son, this quite helps a lot her process, because it can be aggregated in the Jewish community process, and she can say, well, you've analyzed my son already, I'm here, this is my my birth certificate and my son's birth certificate, so do assess my case as well. And if her son was already approved, then there is a really, really good chance that she will be approved as well. And once the Jewish community approves her, she can start her own nationality requests on the registry, but with the grounds of belonging to the Jewish community. So it does help out that her son was approved by the Jewish community, but in terms of the registry of the nationality procedure as well, the only thing that they do care about is the assessment and analysis from the Jewish community. If they say it's okay, then we can submit the nationality via Jewish origin for Sue.
There you go, Sue. Good news for you. Janet S is asking, if we have done the A1, A2 and B1, B2 courses in a government school and we have the official certificates, does Janet still have to do an exam, or all those certificates do?
Well, it will depend on when the certificates were done and where they were done, because it does need to be by an approved entity from Portugal. So at the end of the day, our advice is do send us those documents so we can assess them and provide the best counsel, because without seeing those documents, it's not cautious to provide any counseling. Okay. Just send us, Lydiane has put the email over there. Send us the documents, we can assess that, and we can state if they are right for the submission of the nationality, because otherwise, without seeing the documents, it would be just bad counseling.
Yep. Okay. And Catherine is responding, I think it will be easy just to marry a Portuguese man. Exams, 5 years, lot of work, lol, she says. I don't think we can help with that, Catherine, but you never know, do you, who you might meet in the Expats Portugal community?
Well, hopefully, yes, but do be wary. Do be wary that SEF is on the lookout for arranged marriages, and that is considered a crime in Portugal. So if someone proposes that to you in regards of having some money back, just refuse and stay in Portugal for 5 years. It's easier. Believe me, it's easier. SEF is on the lookout for those situations, so it's really strongly not advisable.
Yes, of course. And knowing Catherine as I do from last week's episode, I think she'd be looking for love as well. So it wouldn't be that sort of arrangement, obviously. Okay. I think we've covered the questions so far. So for whilst people may want to ask some more questions and other things occur to them, perhaps we could return to the sort of nuts and bolts of the process. So when somebody consults you, what is the step-by-step in engaging with you to go through this process?
Well, usually this does start with sending an email and describing briefly the situation. And if they do have documents, birth certificates, marriage certificates, documents from the Portuguese ancestry or any other data, do send them to us in the email, and we can assess the documentation and the background story behind it. And we can then see what is the best fit in terms of the nationality request, and we'll take it from there. So it's usually put all the information in an email as well as documentation and describe the situation as best as possible. We only accept cases that we do know that they are possible. If they are not possible, we will tell our clients straight away that we don't have a nationality case, because it's better to do this than to just disappoint people after 2 years and get a negative answer from the Portuguese government. So to start, a simple email, documentation and the story behind it, and we will assess the case. That's my best advice.
Just to get the ball rolling. Lydiane is in there working behind the scenes, doing a great job tonight as well. Thank you for that, Lydiane, making sure everybody is answered and connected up there. And yeah, on the bigger picture, I mean, this is an amazing time in Portuguese history, isn't it? The amount of people that are being welcomed into the country, it's quite an extraordinary time, given that there's a 10 million population here. There are many people coming to Portugal, Daniel.
Well, yeah, we've been seeing that trend in the past, I would say, 5 years, and Portugal did actually grew a lot in terms of expats living in Portugal, and it attracted the hotspot of the media, the international media, for good reasons. And until COVID struck, we've had a lot of people just wanting to live in Portugal, digital nomads, and people just want to enjoy the sun. So And we do have good, the NHR, the non-habitual tax resident regime, is a good attractive as well to expats that want to live here, fiscal-wise, and the rules, I would say that they are fair to obtain nationality. If you do learn the language, if you stay here for 5 years, you can obtain the nationality. If you've been living here for the past 1 year and you have a kid that is born here, your kid will obtain the nationality. So the government has tried to put in place good measures to facilitate the life of foreigners here in Portugal, and the nationality law was opened in the last two changes. It was only introduced changes that were beneficial to obtaining the nationality in Portugal, as well as if you do compare it to Spain, that they closed down their Sephardic Jew program. Portugal still has one opened, and I do think it's only fair to make amends with history and with our past. So I would say that the road is good, and this is a welcoming country to foreigners.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question coming in from is Tubs. If my daughter goes to university in Portugal, is this a good enough link in terms of the link to the community? And also a supplementary to that, once a spouse gets citizenship, do I need an additional 3 years to apply? So I guess the question being asked there is, if your spouse becomes a national, does that make your process faster? And then the university question, Daniel, if you will.
Well, the university is quite a good situation to demonstrate connection to the Portuguese community, because if you are coming to studying here, usually you will need either a visa to study if you are studying for less than a year, or a residency permit if you are doing a master's or even a bachelor's. So if you are studying in Portugal, you will stay at least for 1 year, even more, and that will grant you a residency permit. And with the residency permit, it is one of the best things that you can have to demonstrate connection to the Portuguese community. And the classes that you will take here, of course, the majority of them, unless you are in an international school, they will be in Portuguese. So all that does provide documents that you can then get into the registry and obtain the Portuguese nationality. So I would say yes, coming to Portugal and obtaining a residency permit to study, it is a great indication that you have a Portuguese connection. And you will, of course, obtain a rental agreement, an IF number, things like that, a paper trail that will allow you to then apply to the Portuguese nationality. So yes, it is a great idea.
Okay, so that's a good connection. And then if the spouse gets citizenship, does that make the process faster for the other partner?
Well, if the spouse, it will depend on the type of nationality. If the spouse attains nationality and it is considered a Portuguese by origin, by birth, then as long as the marriage has been more than 3 years, you can jump into the Portuguese nationality straight away. But if the spouse is obtaining a nationality via, for instance, a residency, she will not be considered a Portuguese by birth, and then you'll need to wait 3 years until you obtain the nationality.
Okay, thank you very much. Now,
so it does depend. The answer does depend.
Of course, yeah, fair enough. So we go back to Nick with a question, a sort of cake and eat it too kind of question, really. If you become a Portuguese citizen, can you still get the benefits of the tax benefit scheme? Now, that's for residency rather than citizenship, isn't it? Otherwise, all Portuguese citizens will be trying to do that, surely.
Well, they can. All Portuguese citizens can obtain the NHR. It's not something that is excluded or that's exclusive to foreigners. The trick is that the Portuguese citizen cannot be a fiscal resident in the past 5 years. So let's say that I went abroad, I went to the UK, I lived in the UK for the past 5 years, and I exited my fiscal residency in Portugal. Once I got back, if I was over there for 6 years and I returned to Portugal and I became once again a fiscal resident in Portugal, I could request the NHR. So the trick behind the NHR is not being a fiscal resident in the past 5 years. if that person became a Portuguese national and was never a fiscal resident in Portugal, then we will not have a problem obtaining the NHR for that person. The only prerequisite is that no fiscal residency in the past 5 years. So for my specific case, as I've been living in Portugal for the past 5 years, no NHR for me. But it's not a nationality issue, it's a fiscal residency issue.
Interesting. And of course, that's quite a good perk for a Portuguese person returning to Portugal.
Yeah.
As long as they've been away.
That was the point. That was actually the point of the program, to have Portuguese that were living abroad, because we had a brain drain, correct? And people that were really highly qualified, Portuguese people living outside of Portugal, but didn't want to return because of the higher Portuguese taxes comparing to the places that they were. Or for expats that want to live in Portugal and want to reside here and find it attractive to have the NHR. So it was directed to these two audiences. Portuguese people that were living abroad that migrated because of the economic situation on the past, I would say, 15 years, and expats that want to live in Portugal. It's directed to the two communities.
I didn't know that, and I suspect a lot of other people didn't know that either. It seems to be something that's aimed at expats, doesn't it? But obviously it works really well for Portuguese people.
It does. Yeah. It does.
Ronald is asking, what is the current status of the non-habitual resident tax system? I mean, nothing's really changed, is it, or is likely to, from your point of view?
It did change a bit about a year ago. In March 2020 or February 2020, they approved a minor change in the law that, because let's say that you were a French national that was retired already and had their pensions being paid in Portugal. What would happen is that the French government would not charge any taxes because they were not being fiscal residents in France. And the Portuguese government would say, well, because you have an NHR, we will not charge you any taxes on that pension that you are receiving from the outside. So this was quite advantageous for people that were retired from Europe, especially where the taxes are higher for retired people with medium to high incomes in terms of pension. And the government, because the Portuguese government was suffering a lot of pressure for the other countries in the EU, and what they've implemented was that if you're not being taxed in the country of origin, you will need to pay 10% tax on your pension here, a flat 10%. So it will not increase with the amount that you earn. But if you are indeed paying a pension on the country of origin, you will get a tax credit here in Portugal. So if some taxes are being paid abroad, you will get a tax credit here, and that is interesting as well. So it changed a bit the program, but I do think it's still quite interesting for highly qualified professionals as well as for retired people living in Portugal or that want to live in Portugal.
All right, excellent. Ronald goes on to say, as a US citizen, what portion of my income is taxed after taxation in the US? Can you address that, Daniel?
Well, it will depend on the types on the streams of income that they will have. Some parts of the income may not be taxed. Some be taxed at 10%, like the pension. So my advice to provide a proper advice: send us an email, tell us our income, your income streams, and we can assess the situation a little bit. But usually, dividend distribution or capital gains that you obtain outside of Portugal will not be taxed here with the NHR, but it does vary, and it needs to be assessed. One thing is for sure: if you are a US national, you will always be taxed, even if you are residing in Portugal, by the US government, because they tax their citizens globally, and even if you do move abroad, you will still be taxed by the US taxman. And that's why some US nationals that have high incomes are relinquishing their US nationality by other nationalities that they have. It's because the US taxman does not kid around, and they will tax you whatever you are.
It doesn't kid around.
No, they don't.
Okay. And that's interesting as well. So American people do relinquish their nationality to avoid that, do they?
It does happen, especially for high-income citizens that are living abroad for a few years and obtained a second nationality. And at the end of the day, they don't have so many connections with the US, so they decide to relinquish their US nationalities because the place that they are does have a fiscal regime that is more favorable to them. Let's say that a US national had the Portuguese and US nationality and the NHR. I would say that it would be quite convenient for them to relinquish the US nationality. But this, of course, is a big step. Relinquishing the nationality is something that you should really think carefully, and it's not something that I would do lighthearted, to be honest.
Absolutely, no, fascinating, and that's a great answer for Ronald as well. There, and with this NHR, with these NHR matters, I think the questions from you, Carolyn, from you, Ronald, and from Istabsh have been addressed there. But it kind of just points to us needing to do another NHR webinar, I think.
It seems so.
Yeah, it's always a popular one, and it warrants its own hour, I think. So we will come back to that, to the whole NHR thing, and we'll do another specific webinar on that. And of course, as Daniel says, get in touch to discuss those specifics of your particular financial situation and how that relates to the NHR. Daniel, you've been amazing again tonight. Very information rich. Obviously, this can be watched again for anybody who missed anything or who wants to refresh their memory. Is there anything you wanted to say that you haven't said so far? Oh, you've been muted by somebody. Let's see if we can unmute you, Daniel, which could be quite useful, couldn't it?
It was me. I had an ambulance just passing by, and it was making a big noise, and I was afraid that I was just upsetting the other participants, so that's why I've unmuted myself. And I was just struggling trying to put sound with me again, but I was not being successful.
That's so.
I'm sorry about it.
No, thank you. That's very thoughtful. I thought it might have been the US tax man. But
No.
Okay, all right. So was there anything we missed? that you
the SWAT teams are not coming yet, so rest assured.
Okay. Yeah, anything you want to add before we close tonight?
Well, I do think that the nationality program, although it does take a long time for some types of nationalities here in Portugal, is worthwhile, and the reward of having a Portuguese passport that is well accepted throughout the world, it does compensate the waiting time that sometimes people need to have. So if someone wants to address any particular situation, feel free to contact us. I will try to answer to the best of my knowledge. And Lydia as well, that is here with us, she is the expert in nationalities, so you will probably talk with me and Lydia to assess your case. Okay, so feel free to contact us, and we'll do the best that we can to assist anyone.
That's tremendous. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in. People have found that very useful tonight. And thank you to you, Lydiane, for your hard work behind the scenes. They're much appreciated as well. And at this point, it becomes a little bit more informal. I'm not sure how long you can stick around for, Daniel and Lydiane.
I'm all right. I have the whole night if necessary, so I'll be able to stay. That's all right.
So we'll conclude the main business of the webinar, and then we can mingle informally as much as that's possible on Zoom. And thanks again to everybody for your questions. Thanks for your attendance tonight, and thank you especially Daniel and Lydiane from Reis Pellicano this evening. Thank you so much.